Hello and welcome to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm Tim Dennison for Dave Schrader. And I know we said we were going to 3 days a week for the spring and the summer, and that still holds true. But this week, we're going to do a special 5-day week. And I'll tell you why. Because we have a couple of different things we want to accomplish this week. Today, in a special Tuesday edition, we want to give you a little bit of a preview of what we do on our True Crime Tuesday show. Now, a lot of you are familiar with True Crime Tuesdays. You've been longtime listeners, and for that, we appreciate you, and we continue to thank you for your support. Some of you are already subscribers to our Patreon show, True Crime Tuesday, and we appreciate you for your patronage on Patreon. For those of you who aren't subscribers, it's simple. You can either go to darknessradio.com, click on the banner that says True Crime Tuesday, follow it over there to Patreon, and subscribe for just $5 a month. With that, you get access to our True Crime Tuesday show with a brand new guest each week, and either Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals or the I Knew a Murderer segment. And you get access to all the archives, every single archive, every single show that we've done over there. And we're now up to like 47 shows and much, much more. This week on True Crime Tuesday, we've got a great show, and I want to tell you about it just briefly. This week on True Crime Tuesday, the topic is Lost Girls, the search for the Long Island serial killer. So Dave will have that topic for you, waiting for you over on Patreon today on True Crime Tuesday, and plus a brand new Dumb Crimes, Stupid Criminals segment. So that's waiting for you over at Patreon. Again, just $5 a month. You're going to spend that on a cup of coffee if you're going to either Starbucks or your local coffee joint, and you're getting much more entertainment for your $5 as well. So join us, please, over there at Patreon. It's going to be a great time. Today, on today's program, we're going to bring you an episode of True Crime Tuesday from our Patreon page. For those of you who haven't maybe tuned in over there at Patreon, what we're going to do today is we're going to bring you an episode from December 19th of 2017, and it's Letters from the Boogeyman, the Dark Legacy of the BTK with Arkansas State Representative Rebecca Petty. Now, Rebecca grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and she was terrified along with the rest of the city of Wichita during the reign of the BTK Killer, Dennis Rader. And we're going to give her story and talk a little bit about how the BTK Killer affected her. That's coming up today on this episode of True Crime Tuesday here on Beyond the Darkness.
Hello and welcome. This is the best in true crime talk radio. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Today we're going to do things a little different. Because of the content of today's show, we're going to forego Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals. And I know there's a part of the audience right now saying, no, but this story is very personal in nature that we're going to cover tonight on True Crime Tuesday. And I don't want to take anything away from this story. And I believe that this is one that just needs our attention and respect. So I hope that you'll understand as your host that this is the way we're going to handle tonight's show. Joining me on True Crime Tuesday, Rebecca Petty. She grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and was terrified, along with the rest of the city of Wichita, during the reign of the BTK Killer, Dennis Rader. He was my boogeyman, she says. When a tragedy struck her own life in 1999, she became a strong advocate for crime victims. Rebecca is currently serving on the Judiciary Committee in the Arkansas House of Representatives and has used knowledge gained from her degree in criminal justice to continue her fight against crime to help crime victims in the state of Arkansas. She's here with us this evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
This was a fortuitous meeting, having you reach out to me out of the blue and getting a chance to chat with you and talk, and I'm so thankful that you were willing to come forward and discuss your story.
Thank you.
Let's start at the very beginning. We talked about your boogeyman and what it was like to be there during the time of the BTK killing spree. Talk to me a little bit about that. How old were you when this crime spree began?
Well, it started in 1974 there in Wichita, Kansas, and I was actually 4 years old when he began his killing spree. So I was sort of raised in just that whole time period and was literally terrified as a child of this man.
This was a very horrific series of crimes, but beginning in 74 with these crimes, how soon did it start to become part of the paradigm there in Wichita? I mean, were you guys aware of this right away? Had murders been going on for a while before they started to piece together that there was a serial killer on the loose?
I think that it took a little while, a couple of years, I believe. And once they started piecing it together, and I don't know if you want me to just jump in and kind of tell how my family reacted to this once they discovered that these murders, probably in about, like I said, 1976, and I was 6 years old going to kindergarten. And one of the things that was happened is we knew that there was a madman on the loose. So being a young child, I clearly remember that if my family would go somewhere and visit someone and come back after dark, that my parents would sort of leave my sister and I in the car and say, wait here until we check and make sure the phone line isn't cut. So I remember as a small child, my dad going around the back of the house and checking to make sure the phone line wasn't cut, and my mom going inside. I don't know why she was always the one that had to go in, but she went inside the house and made sure there was a dial tone, and they would, of course, thankfully come out every time and say, the coast is clear. And I remember them saying that the coast is clear. It's just burned in my mind as a little girl. So just very terrifying. And I knew from listening just to the news and just the feel of the city the whole time in the later part of the 70s. It was really, really scary.
For our listeners that are not familiar with the BTK Killer, can you give us some insight? This was Dennis Rader, known as the BTK Killer, and it was bind, torture, kill, correct? Is that the connection to each one of those letters? Correct. And who nicknamed him the BTK Killer?
I'm pretty sure he nicknamed himself. He corresponded with the television stations, and when he started playing this cat and mouse game with them, he would he named himself. He said, "You shall call him, bind them, torture them, kill them, BTK," and he gave, I believe, like a list of different names, but he kind of liked the name BTK the best, and I think that's the one the media picked up on, and it kind of stuck for many years.
And if you could, describe to us the crimes that he was committing, and how long was his reign?
His reign was over 3 decades, I believe. He murdered 10 people, and started in 74 with the Otero family, and ended, I believe, in, I want to say 92, and I can make sure that's right, but he went all the way through, and he murdered 10 people, and, it was just a very terrifying time for the citizens of Wichita. What
was it about Dennis Rader that they talked about at the time and since that led him to these people that he would kill? Were they specifically picked out for any reason that you're aware of?
I believe that he trolled people, he stalked people, and I think that at times he was an opportunistic killer. I think that he would see a woman, or I believe it was women that he preyed on. Sometimes I think that he messed up, and I don't know how he was not caught sooner, but he went in, and sometimes there was a man there, but he always seemed to be able to take control of the situation. I believe using a gun, and he preyed on people. He's a predator.
What was Dennis Rader like? And this was an interesting aspect of the story we talked about off air today. You made what I felt was a very deeply gripping comment when you said that Dennis Rader was the mask. The creature, the beast that he was who he really is. And the character of Dennis Rader was nothing more than a facade he put on for the rest of the world.
I believe that with all of my heart, that Dennis Rader is the mask, and the BTK is who he truly is. Somebody that is so vicious and so evil to do what he has done can only be just a ugly, raw murderer. I believe that there are people who are just almost not even human, and I think that he claims to have compartmentalized in his brain, but I believe that, just to put it simply, he is the BTK, and Dennis Rader was the mask.
That's absolutely terrifying, isn't it? I mean, to just think
It's terrifying.
That it's, in this case, it's not just a human that acted savagely. It's some kind of creature, some kind of savage that acted in a humane way for part of his life. He would hide behind this human mask and deal with what he was dealing with. The murders, and you said took place, he did 10 that we're aware of, correct? Is there a lot of speculation that Dennis may have been involved in more murders than the 10 that he claims?
I personally believe that, but, you know, it's just speculation on my part, and some stuff I'll explain to you later, but I personally believe there's just no way that somebody so heinous could have only done what he done.
What was his personal life like when he was not in murder, mode? Was he a regular guy? What can you tell me about who Dennis Rader appeared to be to the outside world?
Family man, was married, had a couple of kids, was a Cub Scout leader, was active in his church. He was just an everyday guy, it appeared. You heard around after he was arrested, you heard around Wichita, I believe it was a compliance officer for Park City, Kansas, and you heard of things that he would like find certain people to pick on about their grass being too tall, and somebody's dog getting out, and certain people he would pick on a little extra hard. I also heard that he had one lady's dog put to sleep without telling her. But other than the few run-ins with people, I suppose that his church family thought he was wonderful. I mean, they elected him to be in leadership. I believe he was a deacon. And it's just really, really frightening to know that he was in amongst the crowd and nobody knew for 30 years.
Right, yeah, terrifying chameleon, and all the while, he's committing these murders. Now, he is a bit of a braggart, and obviously he loved playing the games, Hannibal Lecter style almost, with his with the police. If he committed more murders, why don't you think he would just cop to it?
That's a great question. I personally believe that he likes to hold a trump card. I think that he always wants to be one up. He's so full of himself that that's the only way he can remain in control, is that he always knows something bigger and grander. It seems that he has to have the upper hand. And I think that that's the way he's doing it, is he always knows something that everybody else doesn't.
When he was finally captured, what was his downfall?
Well, that he wasn't computer literate. just to be honest, I mean, he himself got caught. The police told him that he couldn't be tracked if he sent a floppy disk, and they trapped him. He sent a floppy disk to them, bragging about a murder and trying to pull them in, and they tracked it back to his church, to a man who logged into the computer named Dennis, and voila, you have a serial killer.
That had to be absolutely bizarre. When that news began to break, that they finally had the BTK killer in possession, or who they believed to be the BTK killer, Do you remember what that was like in your community and around that area for the people that, had lived in fear and terror all those years?
I remember exactly. I was stunned in front of the television. It was in 2005, and I was glued to the TV, and they showed the arrest. They showed it all. And I remember thinking, this is the Boogeyman. This is the guy that did all of this. This is who haunted my nightmares, this little old guy. I was completely floored that was him.
It's really freaky, right? Because this guy is kind of non-assuming. Now, it's easy to look at him and see the pictures that they post, which, let's admit it, are not real flattering of this guy. And he looks evil incarnate in every photograph that I've seen of Dennis Rader. But he lived undetected for over 30 years murdering people. That is the part that's astounding to me, that he seemed to just... Maybe it's that chameleon chip that he had in him. He was just so good at it that he was able to slip in and out without anyone catching on. That is terrifying when you look at the world of true crime, just how easily someone can move amongst us and do horrific things, but still have such a high position. Again, you want to think that this is some kind of degenerate who lives in his mom's basement, and is trapping animals out in the backyard to eat, just that stereotypical kind of Hollywood creepy serial killer feel to it. Not that it's just some guy that is a churchgoer and a family man. Once he was captured, how quickly did he open up and admit to the crimes that he committed?
I believe pretty quickly. At first he tried to say, "You've got the wrong guy. Wasn't me," and they just kept providing the evidence. And I believe that when they came back with the evidence of his daughter's DNA, they said, "Whoever is her father is the BTK strangler, and that is, are you her father?" And he said, "You got me. You got me." So he admitted to it. And then I believe he talked straight for like 35 hours and he just spilled.
And this sense of relief that washed over this community, finally, this heinous killer is off and captured, and people can start to rest again, right? And they can start to take a deep breath. That had to be weird to know that there was just somewhere among you, somewhere right there, a killer that was so vicious and so cruel, and nobody could detect him. Nobody could find this guy.
Nobody. I think about the first murder, and it was, I believe, on Edgemore Street. And from where I lived as a child, that was, 10 miles. So growing up with him in the community and knowing now what I know, that he trolled around. He always was looking for the next victim. And if this victim didn't work out when he was in that mode, he would go next door and try for this one and try for the next one until he finally hit. Just knowing as a child, I was a latchkey kid. It was, the 80s, and I came home, and I think I was like in fourth grade. I'm locking the door, going in, waiting for my parents to come home from work. I was 2 or 3 hours by myself. Just terrifying to me, knowing there was a serial killer running around in that town, and there I was as a kid going in and out of the house.
Isn't it amazing that he would go for the person that he'd been stalking, and if they weren't available, he'd just go to somebody else? That's sloppy worksmanship, and I don't mean that in a making light of it situation, but that's just sloppy. And he was still so proficient a killing machine that he just continued to get away with it. Was he ever under the microscope for law enforcement before finally being caught? Did they ever have an inkling that he might be the BTK?
No. I never suspected him, ever.
Terrifying.
Not once.
How many people did they run through, and did they ever get close to, I don't know, taking somebody else down thinking that they were the BTK killer?
I believe that's what started his cat and mouse game with the police, because someone else had admitted to the Otero murders. And this is all stuff I've just read, and it's out there, and everybody knows I want to show no disrespect to the Otero family, of course. But somebody else had claimed that they did that, and he read it in the newspaper, and he read it and said, this is wrong. And so he sent a letter to the police and to the media and said, these people, this person did not do this because I know that I did it because I laid these glasses this certain way and the bodies were facing this way. And he just described the crime scene. It was just undescribable to someone who didn't do it, and he did it. And he threw it out there, and they had to let the other guy go.
How insane. He was going to get away with it. He had somebody that was willing to cop to the crime, which is terrifying in itself. And maybe as we progress through the show, you can talk to me about that, because being an advocate for victims, I'm curious what makes some of these people out there cop to claims like this. And did they ever find out why this guy was willing to admit it at the time? Was there a plea bargain? Was there some kind of deal? What would encourage somebody to admit to a crime they did not commit?
It was a pretty big deal, in Wichita at that time. A whole entire family brutally murdered. I'm not sure how to answer the question exactly, but I can only suspect that, maybe they wanted attention for doing something like that without having done it. I'm not certain.
God, who would want attention for doing something that horrific that they actually didn't have any handle in? But I guess that was good, because then that outed this guy. Because think about it. If nobody had ever copped to it and his ego was never flicked, he may still have gone on strong for another 10 years.
Oh, he indeed was planning what he called his magnum opus, which was he had another victim picked out, and he admits to it. So it was going to continue.
Did he ever release the information on who that victim was going to be?
He did not.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's just gross. So gross. This guy's captured, and that's all said and done. He's put away. How quickly do they process him and find him guilty? Do you remember?
It was pretty quick. I think within a year, he admitted to everything. I believe you can watch on YouTube his complete confession, and he confesses to every crime. He tells exactly how he did it, and it's really creepy to watch him admitting to everything. And it's particularly upsetting to me, having been a crime victim myself, which we'll talk about later, but just the way he was so nonchalant. He popped his lips. He fidgeted about. He talked about it. He called them his projects. And he was just dedicated to the cause. Frightening.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely terrifying. And he is just one of those people that when you hear him and you read the accounts, there's no other word to explain it other than just pure evil.
Pure evil.
It's not even like there's a mental flaw. This guy was just steeped in pure, unadulterated evil. There's like no humanity in a person like that. And how the chameleon switch is able to work for so long and fool so many people is absolutely terrifying.
Right.
Being an advocate, do you have any idea on a regular basis how many serial killers might be active at one time? Has there been any information out there that you're aware of?
Well, I can only speculate, but certainly he can't be the only one that was able to slip in and out. I think one thing that I have fought for really hard in the community, the victim community, is DNA. And DNA really these days nails a lot of people, but then they didn't have it so much. But I'm certain that there are those who, could still do it and get away with it. And we've come a long way in law enforcement to stop this kind of thing. But, the mind is tricky.
This story goes beyond the initial killings of the BTK Killer. I wanted to set the stage with our guest talking about her own Boogeyman and how that would be. I grew up in the time of John Gacy. And the more terrifying aspect to me was that there was no ties. There was no idea that a serial killer was on the prowl because they weren't finding bodies. So this man was out doing horrific, heinous crimes, burying them in his own yard and under his own house, and just created this house of horrors, for lack of a better term, and continued to...
And dressed as a clown doing it.
Right, and evaded capture for so long. But I remember when that news broke in the 80s when I was growing up, and I remember hearing that and just the shockwave that went through Illinois when we heard of that case. And, it's one of those things that sitting back and looking and hearing like what you lived through with the BTK Killer and what I lived through with Gacy is what would you rather have happen? That you're just unaware that this is going on in your community and around you? Or would you rather be on edge and in fear of this killer stalking about, knowing that it's out there, knowing what it's doing, and knowing that it's playing cat and mouse with the police? That's really frightening. I know a lot of us, that are interested in the true crime genre, certainly enjoy and I hate to use the word enjoy because it makes it sound pleasurable, but I mean, we enjoy the aspects of those stories more because it's so much more rich to what this person is like. And there's so much more to understand about why they did what they did and how they did what they did. It's really just absolutely bizarre. And that starts to bring us to your story. And talk to me about your life 18 years ago.
Well, 18 years ago, and on May 15th of 1999, my 12-year-old daughter, Andy, was visiting her dad in a town in just south of Fort Smith, Arkansas. And she was visiting with her dad, and he went 400 yards down his hill to fish in a pond, and she was there. She was 12 years old. She was there with her step siblings, and she was making some chicken in one of those little fried Addy cookers, and a knock came at the door. And we later found out that from the children who witnessed the account that a man in a red truck told her that her grandparents were sick and that she had to come with him immediately. So she left the house. She was barefooted. She was, quite frankly, I'm sure, terrified. She loved her grandparents, and they lived through a wooded area not far from, probably, quarter of a mile. And so she got in the car, and this person drove her, instead of turning, right to go to the grandparents' house, he went the other way, drove her 10 miles away to the town of Cove, Arkansas, where he told her to get out of the car, and he raped and strangled her, pulled her body out into the woods and covered her with scrub brush. And then he went and had coffee with his dad. It was at that point that his wife, who was her dad's sister, so this was an uncle by marriage, we later found out, she called him and said, and this was in a time frame of about 45 minutes, we can't find Andy, you need to come back and help us. So he came back, and for 3 days there was a statewide search for her. And this search included everybody, the FBI, the state police, the local police, the sheriff's department. There were search parties out for her for 3 days. And finally, the FBI, they were able to get him to confess to her brutal murder. And I can assure you that there's nothing worse than losing someone to murder, but losing a child to a brutal rape and murder is completely the most heart-wrenching thing that anyone could ever even imagine to go through. Sometimes I can't believe that I had to go through that, and it was so fast. Excuse me. It was so fast, yet it seemed so long. I remember that 3-day period of not knowing, and not knowing completely is devastating. 3 days of not knowing where my child was, whether she was cold or hungry, or I can't explain it. I remember I couldn't eat. I physically could not eat food. I couldn't drink. I was a wreck. And I remember, in 99, they didn't have an Amber Alert, which is something that I've since, helped with other families. We've worked a lot on that, but we didn't have it. It wasn't a commonplace these days. An Amber Alert goes out and you go and hopefully find the child. But anyhow, so back to he confessed, and
now can you tell me how was this man? How was this man part of the story? Who was he to your daughter?
He was married to her aunt, so an uncle by marriage.
Okay, so an aunt that was on your husband's side at the time?
Yes, my ex-husband's sister.
All right. Well, was he not recognizable to the other children then?
They initially said it was Uncle Carl, and his wife said, "Don't say that because you could get him in trouble." And so then it went from that to, well, these children have really, really severe vision problems. So they're just saying that because they didn't have their glasses on. So it was nobody. I mean, this was a town of 400 people. This was a community, the largest city in the whole county is Mena, and there's 5,500 people there. So a very small, tight-knit community. And I think it just scared those little kids. So they started at that point questioning themselves. You should always listen to the children. They know. And they initially said it was Uncle Carl. And then they doubted themselves. Well, maybe it was just a man in a red truck. Well, now we're not sure. But when she said, "Don't say that, you'll get him in trouble," that's when they were like, "Oh, well, maybe it wasn't." So there was a friend in the family who fit the description. So they actually were doing a polygraph on both the uncle by marriage and the family friend, and they both failed the polygraph. So,
that's wow. That's a horrific aspect of the story as well.
Well, it made everybody say, "What's going on? Who is responsible?" And finally,
wait 1 second before we get to where they come into this and they make a decision on who's involved. And I apologize. I don't want to make this any more painful than it is, but just trying to gather an understanding. The children immediately say it's Uncle Carl.
Yes.
Who do they say that to? Just immediate family?
Yes, and the police, because they were brought in so quickly.
All right, so then how quickly is Uncle Carl examined as a potential suspect?
Probably the next day late. afternoon when the FBI arrived. Again,
what?
The law enforcement was great.
Law enforcement gets a tip, first off, that it's Uncle Carl. Well, they could be wrong. They have vision problems. Okay, well, let's go get Uncle Carl just to make sure. Why was that not the first move?
He was busy helping. He was busy helping search, and it couldn't be him.
How big were the balls on this jackass that he did this heinous crime, and then he knew that the children knew who he was, and then he came back? I understand people that are, and God, I hate using those terms. I don't understand people that do this, but at least it's more understandable when it's a stranger who then involves themselves in the case and are trying to locate it. Then you've got the people that are trying to be heroes, to be the one that find the body first, or they just want to watch and see how this unfolds and what the police might know. But to have been connected and know that other people saw you and then be a part of this, that is a massive ego. Oh my God, I can't even wrap my head around that.
Me neither. But he did. He helped, and then the police started saying, "Hey," it was really the FBI. They were like, "Okay, something's not right." So they started interviewing, and finally, after a couple of days. And this is while all the other searches are going on, and the whole community at this point is involved and upset and devastated. And I mean, we just wanted her back. I didn't care. I remember mentally just putting a vision in my head of her coming back in the back seat of a police car. I don't know why I envisioned in the back seat, but her with like a teddy bear that a police officer had given her, and her getting out of the back of the car and running to me and saying, "I'm sorry." Because initially they kind of thought that, did she have a fight with her stepmom? Did she run away? So the first thing in the case of a missing child, it seemed way back then that they always just assumed, well, that child has ran away. They're mad at so-and-so. So,
but at that point, we already know that somebody. At that point, they knew somebody knocked on the door and she left with them, so it wasn't a runaway.
Well, and they thought it was a family friend, and she was going off with the boy, and that he came back. The family friend came back and was lying about it, and the assumption was, well, did he take her and they're trying to run away together? I don't know. It was a big mess. It was a mess.
So the search goes on for 3 days. How long did it take until they found her?
He confessed, and he took them to her body. So when he finally confessed, he said, "I did something really bad." And they said, "What'd you do?" He said, I murdered her." And they said, "Well, where is she?" He said, I just can't tell you. And they said, "You're going to leave that little girl out in the rain," because it was storming something fierce. It was May. And he said, "No, I'll take you to her." So he finally took them to where she was. And she would not have been found for a while, if ever.
Wow. Now, was this a one-off for him, or did they start looking at other disappearances? Did they start looking at any other crimes that he may have been attached to?
They did look at other crimes, but nothing panned out that we could know of. But I could have law enforcement. I could have a law enforcement officer on the phone right now who would say there is no way that he could have been so cool and calm and has never done that before. I would bet my life this isn't his first time.
That's sickening.
And it is sickening.
Well, first of all, my apologies to you for the loss. I can't even, there's no words for something like that. And to have had to survive that and know that this was somebody that was part of her world.
Right. There are no words. She was like the most fantastic person. I mean, she was just a blonde-headed kid. I mean, she played basketball. She loved life. She rode her four-wheeler. She loved to fish. She loved to wear lip gloss. She would wear a dress and then, go play in the dirt. I mean, she was just a myriad of colors. I just can't explain what she was just a nice person. She was a nice person. She didn't deserve what happened to her, and neither did any of these victims in any of these cases. People don't deserve that. It's not right.
No. And understand this is just, having had my own life touched by murder, is it easier knowing that she was with somebody she knew? Is it easier to find out that it wasn't a stranger? I mean, is there any comfort in any of that aspect of it for you?
I have never been asked that question. No, because it was so brutal. And she asked, "Where are you taking me?" And we found all of this out later, in the court documents. He's been studied by every psychologist known to man or woman. And, he's told everything that happened that she said, "Where are you taking me? Please take me back." And then after he brutally raped her, she even said to him, "If you'll take me home, I won't tell my daddy." And I can't even hardly even talk about that. I mean, wow. What do you even say to that? That she at the very end was still saying, "Hey, look, we can get through this. We can, just take me back. I'll just keep my mouth shut." So it says to me that she kind of knew that, I mean, how horrifying. I think maybe, to answer your question, maybe it would be worse because you are around this person so much. I mean, you would almost expect, a stranger can be a monster, but right. Somebody that you've been around and you never see the monster. Wow. So.
Did he give any indications if she was willing to go by this and say, just take me home, we'll never speak about this? Why did he then decide to end her life?
He said that if he did that, he knew that her dad would kill him, and that he just couldn't risk that. And in fact, at a court hearing, just probably, we're still going through a lot of that, her dad did try to jump the court rail and get a hold of him. So, I don't know.
Did he... man, there's so many questions on this. When he's talking about this and he's sharing this, did he not show any concern? He was afraid her father would kill him if he found out, but he took her from a place where there were eyewitnesses that saw him there.
Right.
Did he not think that was going to happen to begin with?
I don't know what he was thinking at all. I mean, who in their right mind would ever think to harm a child?
Right. Obviously, I just didn't know if while he was talking about all of this, if, that just, doesn't that seem off? If this guy, which leads me to believe he can't have possibly done this before, because how could you be that blatantly stupid to commit a crime that open with people and be caught within 2 to 3 days? To me, that just, maybe I'm just trying to comfort myself in the fact that there was a one-off. and that he did not do this again or before. So he went to court. I'm sure this was a quick turnaround. What was the final outcome for him?
The final outcome for him was we ended up in court about exactly 1 year from her abduction and murder date, and it took a week to pick the jury. Had an awful time. It was, Arkansas is pretty south, and everybody knew he did it, and everybody just wanted to hang him on the courthouse lawn. They're like, we got to get rid of this guy. Finally was able, after a week, to pick a jury. And then we had a week of trial, and in 45 minutes they they convicted him and sentenced him to death. And later, talking with some of the jurors, they told me the only reason it took them 45 minutes was because there was only one bathroom in the jury room, and they all had to go, so they had to wait in line.
Otherwise, it would have been in the door and back out.
Yeah, it would have been fast.
You're someone who serves our country. You're someone who serves the people of Arkansas.
Right.
I know in my personal case, and it's flip-flopped slightly, but I'm on the same side as most of your Arkansas friends there that, to me, the justice should have been swift and merciless when the final judgment came down. Do you believe that, where do you stand on the idea of things like the death penalty personally? Is it hard to detach yourself from that because it's such a personal case? And where had you stood at, on that thought prior to this in your life?
And I never really thought about the death penalty before because my life had never been touched by crime. Mm-hmm. Until your life is touched by crime, I'm sorry that I don't know your story. That's my bad. I apologize, but I fight for the death penalty. I believe that if the jury hands down a sentence of death, that they've actually probably seen a whole lot more than anyone will ever see in a case, and for them to come to the conclusion of death, and particularly in our case so quickly, that who am I to question what they saw? So,
well, let me ask
you
then.
Okay.
And this, I'm trying to remain sensitive to your situation and story in this as well, but I'm curious then, knowing that the other suspect also tested negatively, jumping to the death penalty conclusion, can you see how dangerous that is? I mean, if Uncle Carl had been a little smarter and had snatched her from the corner where there was no eyewitnesses that saw him, but they got this other guy because he was a family friend and he failed the polygraph test. Right. How do you think that he would have gone down for this crime, or were they able to link DNA to this crime as well?
In Andy's case, yes, the DNA evidence was very strong, and that's why I am such a big believer in DNA. I think, and when we have, when you see these cases that we're seeing now, 20, 30 years later, and they're letting people off of death row, hey, if DNA proves they didn't do it, kick them out of prison. To me, that's wrong. If you did it, and in our case, he has been asking for years to execute me. I did it. And I think something I didn't discuss with you was that he immediately said that within 1 month. I did it. I just want to die for it. They sentenced me to death. Just let's get it over with. So he, in a sense, appealed not to appeal, because you automatically get that in the state of Arkansas.
Right.
So it took, immediately there were attorneys working. No, you can't make that decision. No. So it took 5 years for him to get rid of his automatic appeal. And
what?
Finally,
how is that a thing? How is that a thing in law that if the perpetrator waives that right, how is it the right of attorneys to say, no, we're going to fight on your behalf?
I don't know.
And then you hear about these crimes where people have been put away and they can't get an appeal and they can't get good representation. Exactly. You've got a guy that committed a heinous crime who says, no, I did it, let me die, and they won't leave.
It's because the death penalty is a cash cow, but that's for a whole different show. But that's what happened. And the governor, who at the time was Governor Beebe, he set the execution date, and my family went down to the prison we made the decision as a family that we wanted to witness this execution. So we went to the prison clear down on the other side of Arkansas, southeast Arkansas, and we were going to witness this execution. So we get there, and when we get there, there were 4 of us that they said could go in. Well, when we got to the gate, they separated us, the prosecutor, the FBI, all of the players, the media, everybody that was involved with the case. They ushered them into the room that was behind the glass for the execution chamber, and they took me and 4 other of my family members into the warden's office and set us down in front of a little tiny TV and said, you get to view it live, this via feed on this little bitty grainy green TV, so you could see the gurney, but that was it. And I was like, are you kidding me? I made the choice to witness this. I spent time with my family making this huge decision to see to the final bit of my daughter's business on this planet, and you're telling me that everybody that was involved in the case gets to go into the execution chamber, and I have to look at it on a satellite feed? Are you kidding me? And they said, sorry, that's state law. I was like,
what is state law? Well, so this piece of scum gets more dignity than the family?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I didn't speak about that. Well, long story short, he decided at the last minute that he wanted his appeal. So they did not execute him. They gave him that appeal. He controlled everything. He has controlled everything up to this point. So he got his appeal.
So wait,
he was not
literally
executed.
To the last minute, he was about to be executed, and then he said, "No, I better take that appeal.
I want my appeal."
How is that?
It was
by the time they've got to the point where they're going to throw the switch. How is it even still in play that you can get an appeal? Aside from what we've seen, the governor calling and doing it.
It's the very, very, very last second. The very last second. And that's something that I have since learned that, I mean, just from being in the House of Representatives, that to the very last second, they can fight, the attorneys, whoever can fight. I mean, and it is a fight until the needle is, until the drugs are being pushed. And
do you think that's why they keep you separated and put you in a room with a TV set instead of with all of the players and the attorneys and everything? Do you think it was for that reason?
Yes, I maybe that their excuse was, well, this we just need to keep the victims away from the media because we don't want the prison to have bad press if somebody faints or somebody this or that. But I thought that was the most ridiculous thing that I had ever heard. So after he got his appeal and he started this whole process from just day one, it was like he gained himself 5 years because it took 5 years for them to even put him on the gurney. So I never spoke about it for 10 years. I was so devastated that I didn't see justice for her, and the state of Arkansas treated my family and me like that before I went into the House of Representatives in 2012, I thought, I just started thinking about how bad we were treated, and I was finishing my college degree, and I'm like, this is just so wrong. Certainly somebody could change this law. So I contacted my senator, and I said, and he was a new incoming senator, and I told him the story, and he was like, that is the most horrible story I've ever heard. And so when he went into office, he promised me, a politician that actually promised and delivered, he promised me that the first bill he would ever write was to make it where the victims could choose how they wanted to deal with the last bit of business that their family has on the planet, whether they want to go, whether they don't, that they get to make that decision. If they want to go into the execution viewing room, they can. The rest of the family, if they need to be there for their loved one who just witnessed that execution, they could be on the prison grounds, because they didn't even let my parents on the prison grounds. This was their granddaughter that was murdered, and they were treated with no dignity. So he wrote up the bill. It got through the Senate, passed through the House committee, and it tanked on the House floor in 2012. And I cried and cried and cried. I felt like that she had partially been murdered again. And I was so angry, and I was so sad.
What was the reasoning behind these government officials who are working for the people to, again, protect the guilty and punish the innocent? What was their answer? Or and I apologize for being so ignorant to the way of politics.
No, you're good.
Why are they?
It's money. They do control and money.
Do they get to say why, or do they just set a silent, ballot of yay or nay, and then and we never get to understand why they made a decision one way or another?
Well, the Department of Corrections didn't want the family, again, in with the media, so they wanted to build a $1 million victims room. And I said, hang a curtain. If you want them away, I'll buy the stupid curtain, and you can hang it in the room and put the family behind the curtain. You don't need a room, but it was written into the bill because the Department of Corrections insisted, and it tanked because of $1 million room. So, fast forward 2 years, and I called my senator again, and I said, would you please run that bill again? Because we're in session every 2 years. I said, would you please run it again? And he said, what's your address? And I said, what's that have to do with anything? He said, well, where do you live? So I gave him my address, and he said, the seat in your district is open due to term limits. Why don't you run for office and you pass the bill? I don't think they could tell you no. I said, I'm not a politician. And he said, well, you can be. You're a person. So I said, well, okay. So I ran for office, had a really hard primary, had a pretty, the general was pretty easy. But I ran for office and I won. And so I wrote a new bill, and the Department of Corrections just about fainted when they found out I was in office, because I had taken them on when I wasn't even in the House. And so that's what I did. I got the bill written, and it was, to me, all about dignity to the victim's family. And of course they tried to fight me every bit of the way. So what I did is I changed it to Andy's law. And now in the state of Arkansas, 6 family members can go into the viewing room with the media, with the prosecutors, with everybody. And one of my arguments was, You mean to tell me you can take care of an entire prison full of hardened criminals, and you cannot take care of 6 family members who are devastated? If that's the case, you people need to replace your entire staff. And that's how I explained the bill. I said victims deserve to be treated with dignity. Victims deserve a whole lot more than being stuck in the stuffy warden's office with a TV. So this is what's going to happen. And so I wrote the bill to perfection. I took the $1 million building out, saved the taxpayers a whole lot of money, and now victims can choose how they want to deal with an execution. And that bill is named after my daughter's namesake. That was the first bill I passed, and it got 100 votes in the House and 35 in the Senate.
Again, you're listening to True Crime Tuesday here on Beyond the Darkness. If you like what you're hearing, you can listen to True Crime Tuesday every Tuesday on Patreon. Join us over at Patreon. True Crime Tuesday. It's what your pals here at Beyond the Darkness are doing. It's our other show over on Patreon. It's real simple to subscribe. You just go to darknessradio.com, click on the banner. It takes you right over to Patreon. And for $5 a month, you get every Tuesday a brand new show, just like the one you're hearing right now. Plus, you get the Dumb Crime Stupid Criminal segment or I Knew a Murderer. Either one. And you get a full hour and a half to 2 hours of show every single week, just like the show you're hearing right now. I'm telling you, it's well worth the $5. You know you're going to blow that $5 on a Happy Meal, or you're going to blow that $5 on something at lunch or a cup of coffee. It's probably going to go to something extraneous. For that $5, you get a brand new show every week. Plus, you get access to all the archives. There's almost 50 shows sitting there, just like the one you're listening to right now, that are waiting for you to listen to. Again, just $5 a month gets you all this great true crime listening. Go do it right now. Go to darknessradio.com, click on the True Crime Tuesday banner, subscribe, and join us over there at Patreon. And you're going to know that you got some great listening ahead of you. Do it right now. We'll be right back, and we'll listen in more with the letters from the Boogeyman, the dark legacy of the BTK, with Arkansas State Representative Rebecca Petty. It's coming up next on Beyond the Darkness.
Beyond the Darkness.
Welcome back to a special True Crime Tuesday edition of Beyond the Darkness. I'm Tim Dennison for Dave Schrader. Our topic today, letters from the Boogeyman, the dark legacy of the BTK, with Arkansas State Representative Rebecca Petty. Let's join the program now, again in progress. And a reminder, again, if you want to subscribe, just $5 a month, go to darknessradio.com, click on the True Crime Tuesday banner and become part of the party. It's just $5 a month over there. Go ahead and do it now. Let's join the program in progress.
Wow, well, congratulations for making a difference. And I applaud the politician that you reached out to that said they can't tell you no. And
right.
Your story is so inspiring in the fact that I think there's this huge division line in our country right now. And partly because people feel that government no longer cares about them or that they don't have a say. And you didn't think you had a say. You weren't a politician. You weren't ready for that. And you stepped up and you won it. And you won it in this manner. And that is remarkable. I mean, that is unbelievably remarkable that you had that fortitude to go forward, and I congratulate and applaud that. And I know that in almost in the same sense as John Walsh, that now your child's death did not go in vain, that you're working to make changes so that other parents, friends, relatives that suffer a loss like yours have more of a say in how things happen and what justice is truly served. So,
and that's what I fight for. Every time I sit down at that table in the Judiciary Committee, I'm surrounded by lawyers, and I mean, I don't when they start talking their lawyer speak, I will just say, okay, now explain it in layman's terms, because everybody in this room is not an attorney. Let's hear in layman's term what you're trying to do. And they just kind of look at me for a second and they're like, oh, well, okay. And so it has made such a huge difference in the state of Arkansas that so far I don't even have an opponent for the upcoming term, and I'm not saying that I won't, but I went into this and I told my district, I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to fight for your kids. I'm going to fight for you to be safe. I've worked with the police. I've worked with prosecutors for the last 2 terms. I've gotten the Advocate of Justice Award through our Prosecutors Association. I just work hard for the victims of the state, and I've never pretended to be anybody else. They know I'm a mom. They know I still don't feel like a politician. And they know I will fight, and they know that I just want to help keep people safe. And that's how I look at it, and I've never promised anything else. And people want to be safe. So I think that's why I've been successful thus far.
All right, we've got this feel. I've got to follow up with what he got his appeal.
Yes.
What happened after the appeal?
Well, still fighting the whole process. The case went clear up to the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, and I'm not even kidding here. It sat on the judge's desk for 5 years, and this is no joke. He had to die before somebody else even looked at the case. And they looked at it and said, wow, this has been here for 5 years. And I later found out that judge did not believe in the death penalty, so he just pushed all death penalty cases aside. And the new judge that came in said, well, if we're going to, start this case up, let's make sure that everything is, the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and we're going to send this case back down to circuit court. So there was a possibility that we would have had to gone through the whole sentencing phase again. So they kicked it all the way back down to circuit court. And this has only been within the last couple of years. And finally, we are at the point that it is now coming back out of circuit court and going back up to the Arkansas Supreme Court. Now you're talking a confessed child rapist and murderer, and they are fighting this hard to, quote unquote, save his life. So this case has been in limbo for 18 years.
Where is
and
the
he raped
justice?
And strangled a little girl.
Where is the justice?
You tell me. You tell me. I don't know.
This is unbelievable. It's disgusting. It's watching people have rights that took the rights away from others, and that they're given this. In my case, the 3 animals that butchered my friend and 2 of her children were put on death row, and then outgoing governor of Illinois commuted all the sentences to life without parole. And 2 of these scumbags have online dating profiles for prisoner dating. And I wonder, why do they have access to the internet? B, why are they allowed? And I've heard from people in the past, and I've mentioned this, well, they're humans. And no, they're not. They're subhumans. They're disgusting, vile pieces of garbage that should have been eradicated the moment that gavel hit the ground and said guilty and punishable by death. The idea that in this case it wasn't any other possibility. There was no other possible person, because they found all of the evidence on the 3 perpetrators. They found there was no question that these animals did this crime. Just like there's no question the good old Uncle Carl isn't the killer. What are they appealing? Are they appealing just the death sentence, or are they appealing, and how can they appeal something that's in play? If Arkansas has the death penalty and that's what justice was meted out, how do you appeal the justice?
They have appealed everything from they said that there was one point that during the hearing that I influenced the jury because I stormed out of the room. The true story is they held up a picture of my daughter's body in the weeds, and I just stood up and walked out because I didn't want to see that. I didn't want to see her that way. Another thing they're appealing is that they're now just lying. They said that we wore buttons with her face into court and that the prosecutor's office made those buttons for us. We never did that.
First of all, what? Who cares? If you came in with a flippin' banner and her name tattooed on your belly and you were showing your stomach off in a half shirt, that has no bearings to this frickin' crime. Who cares? Oh,
I'm with you.
She was influencing. Yeah, she should be allowed to influence them. This piece of garbage violated and murdered her daughter and left her in the woods. There should be, oh man, our justice system is so twisted and broken. It just disgusts me. It on a daily basis. And, I'll get the emails already, Rebecca. You're a journalist. You're supposed to remain objective. I'm not a journalist. I'm a stupid talk show host. I'm allowed to get emotional about this stuff. And I'm just disgusted by the way our jury system and our entire justice system works. We don't work for justice. We work to win. And that's wrong.
Right.
And I understand now more than ever that you have to be careful with the death penalty because you have to know that this, without a shadow of a doubt, is your perpetrator. And if we put him away, we had enough evidence to put him away, but we don't have enough evidence to say that we're gonna put him to death. And I guess that becomes the sticky wicket. Then you can say, well, if you're that, your confidence is that weak that you won't go for the complete justice, then that must mean that you don't have enough of a case to do that. So I can see how this whole ugly machine just rubs against each other and creates outlets for criminals that should never see the light of day.
Yes.
You're in politics. You're a part of the government. How do they feel about that now? I mean, are they trying to use your position against you and against getting justice for your daughter now because you're somebody that advocates for?
They haven't yet, but I'm sure that's coming. But I always make sure that if I'm in the Capitol or anywhere around Little Rock and I see a Supreme Court judge or justice, I will turn and leave the room. I will not be seen. I will not talk to them. I don't even want to be photographed anywhere near the Supreme Court building. So I'm very, very careful who I talk to, but I'm sure that they will somehow find a way to say I influenced. And sometimes on Twitter they call me the angel of death when all I'm doing is fighting for justice for my daughter.
Who calls you? Who calls you the angel of death?
When all of this death penalty stuff comes up in the state of Arkansas, I get beat up on Twitter all the time.
By who though? By the press?
No, the press. The press are pretty respectful.
By the politicians?
Trolls.
Oh, well, trolls. Yeah, trolls are trash. And yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just be thankful there's no death penalty for trolls because, boy, would that be swift justice. Horrific. All right. So 18 years this case is dragging on. Have you ever contacted Uncle Carl to talk to him about this case, or are you not allowed to because that will mess with the whole thing?
I could. Well, here's an interesting thing. Probably about 7-8 years ago, he wrote me a letter and told me, of course, that he's a good Christian now, and that he thinks I should forgive him. I mean, he used language that I'm thinking an attorney wrote this letter and had him sign it. And then I realized that he wrote the exact same letter to every person in the family. So I don't have it in front of me, or I'd share some of it with you, but it was just basically, I'm a Christian now. I hope you can find it in your heart to just forgive me for what I done, and I'm going to be with the Lord someday, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, how about this? I don't need to be the one to forgive you. Let's just, if you're a good Christian, let's just, send you up there right now so you can go up there and, I'm sure if you're a good Christian, they're waiting for you. It's going to be better than sitting in prison. So,
right. Well, the person that can forgive him isn't alive to do it.
Right.
So, that's about how I feel about that. But,
and understand, folks, I'm talking about justice. I'm up in arms about this, not because I want, and I've got the taste of blood and I want punishment for people. I want justice. I want swift justice for people that are beyond a shadow of a doubt proven to be guilty of a crime that heinous. And do I believe that their lives should end? Yeah. I don't hesitate to say that anymore.
But that's the thing. It needs to be swift, and it's not.
No.
And that's the sad thing for victim families. I mean, we have to live this every single day. There has not been one day in 18 years that I haven't thought about that sweet little face. There hasn't been one day that I have thought, today I'm going to get up and just chill out. No, I'm going to fight for you. What can I do on this day to fight for you, even if it's I just have a nice thought or hold the door for somebody or be kind or smile at somebody. Her big thing was on her headstone, we put the word smile because she wrote that on everything. So if I look at somebody and smile, I know that day I did something to fight for her. Rebecca, it's as little as that.
I'm curious, and again, I don't know the law. I don't know how this all works or what kind of appeals are coming up. But our parents, are you allowed to speak to the jury and to the courts regarding this case?
The jury is, of course, long gone, and they have over the years, several of them contacted me and spoken to me.
No. Okay, well, so they're not using a jury.
Voters.
Right, but what I'm asking is so that there's not a jury involved in the appeals process. That just stays in the judge. Well, what about the legal system and the judges and senators and governors and everybody that's looking at this? Do you get to address them, or is this just paperwork being shuffled back and forth across people's desks?
It's paperwork now, and that's why I fight so hard to keep her picture and be so vocal about who she was. To me, it's not about Uncle Carl Roberts. It's about who Andy was and what a wonderful person that she was. But pretty much I have to constantly remind them that she's not a stack of papers. You would not believe, for the longest time, I kept every single court record that was ever manufactured. And just in my head, I was like, what if every computer what if we had an EMP and the whole computer world crashed? Well, who would prove that he did anything ever? Well, I have every piece of paperwork. Right. But to them, that's all she is. She's paper. But to me, she was my daughter, and I'll fight for her.
To the courts, he's something more. And what I'm curious about is the most telling part of this story to me, Rebecca, is that in the last few moments of your daughter's life, she still had the wherewithal to negotiate, to try to make it right. And she was met with swift justice right then and there because he had to protect himself, and it was his justice. Well, you know what? In that last second before the needle went in the arm and he said, no, I want an appeal, they should have just said, F you, where's the appeal for her daughter? And that injection should have gone in. Your daughter appealed, and there was no appeal. There was no time or conscience granted in this case. Why are we giving the killer more than we give or was given to the victim? I don't understand that at all. Why are we giving any? Well, you know what? All right. Well, he's changing now. Well, of course he's changing in prison. When you get 18 years to sit on your ass and think about what you did and read the good book, yeah, you might have changed, but that doesn't mean that, now time's going to fix itself and that Andy's going to be alive. Good for you. You're a Christian and you saved your soul. Good for you. Now it's time to go meet your maker and see just how good a job you did as a Christian fixing yourself. This is so disparaging. you now do something, and people are probably going, what the hell does this have to do with the BTK? And, and we're going to get to that, folks. That's why another reason we're not going to do dumb crimes and stupid criminals today. You did something interesting. You suffered this massive loss in your life. You turned it around, and you've made a career out of advocating for victims' rights so that hopefully other families and other victims do not have to go through what you and your family have gone through.
Right.
Why now catch us up to the Boogeyman, and what made you decide to reach out to the man that terrified you and was a terrifying force in the world for over 30 years? Why would you reach out to a man that had nothing to do with your case?
Well, I guess I could just back up and say it was about a year before I was in politics. I was finishing up my criminal justice degree, and I just want to preface by saying, I didn't intend nor expect to have like a continued correspondence, and that's where we're going with this. I didn't intend to become a Clarice Starling to Hannibal. None of that was my intent. My one intent was to get a complete 4.0 in college and do it with my final capstone paper. And I went through my mind, and I was like, I have done so much, and everybody in the state of Arkansas just assumed that I would share Andy's story with my capstone. And I was like, I don't want to do that. What I want to do is something different. So I just, in my mind, I went through it, and I was like, you know what? I think that on this capstone paper, I want to reach out to the second most horrifying person in the world who terrified me as a child, who was confessed to murdering 10 people. And I want to ask him the simple question, why? Why do people like you do it? And so I wrote him a letter, and I told him the absolute truth. This is who I am. Of course, at that time, I was not a representative, but I said, I'm in college. This is my capstone. I'm reaching out to you, and I want to know why. And that was like I graduated in the winter of 2013. So in December, so I wrote him. It was about, I think, August or September, and I never heard back. And I was like, well, okay. And so I had to write the capstone on something else. But in November, right when I was getting ready to graduate, I got a packet, and in the corner it said Dennis Rader, and there was stamped on the back, this correspondent is from a Kansas inmate. And I froze in my driveway. I was like, I couldn't even open it. I called my sister, and I was like, the BTK wrote me back. What do I do now? And I was startled. I was frozen. I was like, I don't need this now. I wrote my paper on something else, and now he sends me a letter back and wants to say why. I don't even want to open this. So that's what started everything. Was I wanted to write a paper, and I did reach out to him. Yes. So there I am.
So you write this letter of introduction.
Yes.
Did you explain to him what you were doing, that you were trying to write a legal paper, or did you just say you were just somebody that wanted to know why?
Both. I explained the situation. I said, I want to know why. And he sent me back. I think it was probably the first letter was about a 5-page letter with a diagram, and he asked questions about the case, and he wanted to know and explain some of the whys and the simple whys, and it was just a myriad of kind of like, holy crap, this guy is wicked. This letter is full of so much information that things I never would have suspected that could come from Carl Roberts.
And he wanted insights on your case. Dennis Rader was working like Hannibal Lecter. He wanted quid pro quo. You tell me about this and I'll give you insight on why I did what I did, kind of thing.
Yes.
And was it giving you insights into the mind of Uncle Carl and why he did what he did?
Yes. And he said things like, the simple why is sex, that he probably for a while preyed upon her. He talked to me about strangling a person. He told me things like that it's not easy to strangle a person, which to me was mortifying to read this from the Boogeyman explaining about something like that happened to my daughter. When I read what he exactly said, which was strangling a person is not easy. Shown on TV or in the movies, it's not real. The victim fights hard, causing more traumatic events to happen to the victim. When I read that, I was sick. I was like, what am I doing corresponding with this madman? But there was something inside of me saying that, after Andy died, I remember searching the internet for why and how and what happens when someone's strangled. I wanted to know. I wanted to know what happened to her. And he gave me information on something I would never have known. So I was kind of pulled in. I wanted to know more.
How forthcoming was he in continuing letters with you? Was he always wanting more personal information about you?
He was. He got to the end. This correspondence, the last letter that I received from him was in August of last year. Excuse me. And, but yeah, he, there was one point where he asked for a picture of me, and I was like, no, I don't think so. He wanted me to come see him. He wanted me to call him. No, I wanted the facts, ma'am. That was it. I just wanted to know the facts. And, but it was like over time that he got more and more and more attached, and I had to just play the game to get the information. I wanted to know the mind of the killer, just because I needed to know as a mom. I needed to know something that nobody else except for Uncle Carl, and I dang sure wasn't talking to him. I wanted to know why and how and what happened. I wanted to know who dropped the ball. Why was nobody, watching Uncle Carl look at her, and what happened? And, at the end of the day, he says the simple why is sex. It's about the trolling. It's about the praying. It's about planning out what you're going to do, and just the thrill of the chase. And it was just quite sickening, to be honest.
Did you ever get the feel that he was enjoying your pain and loss?
Maybe slightly. I'm sure there are those who would argue and say he was just really, really playing on you. He was just using you. But in a way, I was using him. And I had to come to the conclusion of, this is a bad guy. This is a really bad guy. He can say all and tell you all of the nice things that went on. And like one of the things, I'll read a quote of one of the letters, that when he talked about his home life, and this is what he says: "For myself, I daydream of home, have remodeled it in my mind, and on paper I still live there. I pet my dog, I do kitchen KP work, I cook out, I garden, I welcome my relatives, I welcome our children. I stay up late on Saturday nights with popcorn and movies. The list goes on. I miss it dearly. I was like, wow. Maybe you do, but that's not you. That's the lie. That's Dennis Rader. You are the BTK, and that's how I know that he's just a murderous liar. He's a murderous liar, but he would say things in these letters, and then he would go on to say how strangling a person is. And I was like, wow.
So
and of course,
you
my
are,
family.
You're talking to your boogeyman to get insights on why your family was picked, on why this crime happened to your child. And you're getting a very interesting insight on this. And again, because it's not something you can go directly to Uncle Carl with, but you're getting this insight from somebody who's been there. Does that open you to the point where if you could, if they said to you, we're going to give you amnesty, 30 minutes in the room with Carl to ask whatever questions you want and get those answers, and he has to answer you, would you want that sit down with him? Or do you feel that he's already said what he originally meant when he, said, I did this, I did a horrible thing, and I deserve to die? Was that the only time that he's ever told the truth?
Wow, that's a good question. If I could have 30 minutes to ask any question, I'm not. I think yes. If I knew that exactly at this point, but back when I reached out to Dennis Rader, I don't think that I would have. It was like at that point, I was less afraid of Dennis Rader than I ever. I was terrified at that point of Carl Roberts. I mean, he had taken away the most precious thing to me. And even though Dennis Rader had done the same thing to 10 or who knows how many other families, he didn't do that to me. And of course, through the letters, I thought by the time it was all said and done, I could tell this is a lie. This is a lie. This is, come on. I could decipher, and now I'm almost able to pick out codes and see that the whole time that perhaps he enjoyed this because he likes the cat and mouse game. I'm not a dumb woman. I can read between the lines. Sure, now I see that he, was messing with me a lot. And how do I know that maybe Carl Roberts wasn't messing with me too by sending me the little "I'm a Christian, forgive me" letter? I'm kind of at the point where these people are, like I say, just they're almost subhuman. If you can do that to a child, and Dennis Rader, he says, I don't want to be known as a child killer. Well, one of his very first victims was a little child, and it wasn't too far away from the same age as my daughter. And every letter I sent to him, I never, ever didn't think about that the same letters that you're writing this with, you hurt that little girl and all of these other people. You've murdered these people. So I learned how to read between the lines, and I don't even, like I said before, I didn't intend for it to be a continued correspondence at all. I wanted one letter to write my paper, and then I guess I kind of got sucked into the game, and that's what it was to him, I believe. And I think that's what Carl Roberts would like it to be too. He probably wanted me to write back and say, hey, I forgive you. I believe you're a Christian. Well, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, it's not your job to give him forgiveness. It's not your job to
not my job.
And make him feel better. He needs to twist and win for as long as he can. It just
as does Rader.
Right. Oh, right. No doubt about that. Let me ask you something. There are, on average, tens of thousands of rape kits per state that go unprocessed because there's no funding. Mm-hmm. That means there are thousands of rapists, murderers, and serial rapists on the run. There are people that are imprisoned for crimes they did not commit because we can't afford to pay for rape kits to be processed.
Right.
But we're sinking money into ridiculous things like studying, the third moon of Jupiter, which has no impact on our planet.
Right.
Has no impact on helping the people here. What do you see? I mean, being a part of politics, have you got any inclination to want to step up your game and move up to the next level? Do you want to keep moving forward? And if you do, what can we do as a people to start getting these rape kits processed every year?
I would say this, and this is really, really important. Write your legislator. Write your senators, write your state representatives. And when you do it, if you send them an email, please don't write a book. We get so much mail, so much email. Make it a quick paragraph. This is why we need to do this, and let's do it, and get a lot of people to do it. If you can get, 25 people, and don't do a form letter, but to write a personal paragraph, that's when your leaders start to listen. That's when your representatives and your senators, and I'm not talking about the big boys in Washington. I am talking about your state, your state representatives, your state senators. Write them letters and just don't overwhelm them. Just do it short and do a lot of them. And that's when people start listening. 25 letters, you would be stunned how that could make a difference. Even if you brought 25 people to the steps of the Capitol and spent 2 hours picketing outside, it works. Because you can't tell me, because I've seen it before. People the legislators they're looking out the windows of that Capitol building going, oh my goodness, our people are not happy. Somebody's not happy. What are they picketing? Oh, okay. Well, we got 25 emails about that. But sometimes it doesn't even take getting a bunch of people together to the Capitol. It just takes spending 20 minutes to write and get all your friends to write a paragraph.
But here's where it gets weird, right? So we get our people to write paragraphs and send them in, personal accounts, personal stories of why something needs to happen. And then it just goes up the ladder to the next level that push it down and want to focus on something else that's nowhere near as important as these. You've seen it happen. That's why people feel so powerless. That's why people feel so powerless in our current situation with our government, is that we don't feel we have a voice, and we don't feel we can make any changes. Obviously we can. You've done it, and you're working hard to do it constantly, and that's fantastic. But how, where do we start? Do we start with our representatives? Do we start with our senator? Do we start with our governor? Which level is going to get the most attention and is going to actually pay attention? As you said, they get tens of thousands of emails probably a month. What's going to make our letters stand out more? But
mostly when we're in session, I would say, like right now in the off session, they have a phone number. You look them up. You call that phone number. You write the letters. And I mean, this is the time when the bills are being written to be run in 2018. So, like right now, I'm already working with our prosecutors to bring forth legislation to make things better for victims. And so right now, even in a little bit of the off session, start saying, hey, we want you to do this. I just worked with a domestic violence survivor, and I'm working with her to right now connect her with the legislator that writes that specific kind of legislation, and we're going to get together and we're going to make it happen. So it's just, and it's sad, but it's almost like you have to pitch your cause and say, this is important and this is why. And if you call them, I mean, I don't know about every other politician, but I return calls and I answer the phone. If I don't take the call, then I will answer the message. So, and it's frustrating when people don't leave a message. Because if I'm like in a meeting and I don't get to the phone or something and they don't leave a message, I'm like, well, am I going to be cussed? Please leave a message. I need to know what you're saying, and make sure that it's your legislator. I represent 30,000 people in the northwest part of Arkansas, and I am more apt to call somebody that lives down the street from me because they're my constituent than somebody clear across the state, because I represent that person. I mean, I'm a state representative. I represent a certain person in a certain part of the state. So, and a lot of times I see that people don't really understand how the political system works. And I'm just like, who's your representative? I will help you. And if that's somebody that's not my constituent, sometimes I will say that, let me help you by guiding you to them. And if they won't help them, sometimes they call me back and say, well, so-and-so wouldn't help me. And then I'm like, okay, well, you're an Arkansas citizen, so let's see what we can do. And I'll just keep on. I mean, I have just become a genius at just, I hate to say it, but nagging people to help others. I feel like I'm in the nag of the legislature, but people want help. And if you just open your ears and you listen, then that's what makes the change. Don't be a jerk. Reach out. You wouldn't believe what being nice to someone could do. And legislators or people who are just mean, nothing's going to change. Nothing at all.
It's always astounding to me how we can earmark money for stadiums, for sporting teams, but we can't earmark money for justice and getting things done and handled the right way.
Preaching to the choir.
Right. It's astounding to me. Listen, I love football. I love the new stadium we have in Minnesota. It's fantastic. It's one of the most beautiful stadiums I've ever seen. But if I knew that just a portion of that could have gone to help this, getting justice for, people that are in prison, they need justice. The people that are there wrongly accused. And it was something pretty staggering. I think they said there's up to I guess they guess around 200 people per state that are illegally or wrongfully convicted of a crime they did not commit. And in the cosmic scheme of things, well, that's not that big. That's not that much. Are you nuts? What if it was your friend or relative or child?
Or you.
Right, that got railroaded because there just wasn't enough time to do the kits. And while, we could go back and test those kits, but we have so many new cases coming in. There has to be a way to stave this stuff off and get answers so that we can stop people like this. And, I mean, they have good old Uncle Carl's DNA sample now. Have they been running it against a database to see if any of these other murders that turned up were the same? And did they do any other sweeps in the area where your daughter was placed to see if perhaps this was a popular dumping ground for him?
Right. I can bet no. In fact, I can probably say definitely no. And that's sad. And of course, I feel like one lone voice in the wind, but that's things I fight for right there.
Okay. And you have a police officer, you said, who believes there's no way that Uncle Carl was this calm, cool, and collected about it, and this would have been his first time. Why then? With that knowledge, why is law enforcement not able to examine that location past the one body that they found that he pointed them to? Why are they not out there with a blood dog just checking, just double check? Because we know that there are killers and rapists have dump grounds.
Right. I don't know. I don't know. I know that this officer, if I asked him to this day, he would probably go do it. But like with a lot of these cold cases, you know, what happens is time moves on, people move on, police officers are promoted and they move on to a different job, judges move on, people die. It's
right, but you've got a man who's evading justice right now. You've got a man that's evading. Isn't this the good time to turn that heat up and get that police officer back out there with some cadaver dogs just to check the area to see if there might be other cases that are 19 years old, 20 years old, 21 years old that may be in that area that we can attach to this barbarian that's up trying to appeal for his life. Oh, poor fella. Why not?
Right.
You know, that's what I think the law should do, is investigate that area. Was it public property? Was it private property that he took your daughter to?
This was a logging. They were doing, it was down an old logging road, so they were, I don't know who owned it, but they were just getting the timber off of that land. So there was a bunch of logging trucks, you know, up and down that road all the time, and she was in a slightly wooded part. So yeah, I mean it's a great concept, but like you said, no money and people move on, and it doesn't become a passion anymore. People lose. It's like, well, what do we do now? I'm retired, and so I'm no longer a law enforcement officer, and you know, this case will haunt me forever. But you know, what can I do now?
It shouldn't need to. It shouldn't need to haunt anybody.
I know.
Right? Because we have enough resources in this country to re-examine some of these cases. We have veterans who are, you know, that would like to feel important and a part of our society again. And if we could give them jobs like following up on some of these leads, following up, and you've got, and by that I mean veterans of not just law enforcement, but of our military that have law enforcement background.
Brilliant idea.
We've been losing a lot of our natural resources by letting them de-evolve and sit there and get old and decay because it's not worth it to bother. I bet you would have veterans left and right that would be willing to sign up to look into these things, to examine, to talk to people, knock on doors, hand out pamphlets, whatever, to start getting justice in those areas. And
it's a fascinating idea. I actually love it because I do a lot of work with our veterans in this district, and that, oh my goodness, that would give them a lease on life. And I'm not even kidding. Young and old veterans. I mean, I love that idea. And that's something I actually just might explore. That's great.
Please do. And yeah,
keep talking.
And let me know what we can do ever to help you, because you're always welcome to join back on our show and talk about what you're doing, because I think it's important to not only talk to you about this, but this is something that starts to raise awareness to the listeners we have across the world, that maybe they can start to make differences and they can start to see justice for people that they've lost. And I am astounded when we do our calls for I Knew a Murderer, how many emails we get from people that know a killer or multiple killers, and how that's touched so many of our lives. So it's a bigger cancer than we're giving credit for, and it needs to be eradicated.
And again, the not knowing is what destroys people.
Right.
I mean, I just can't. I can't even imagine having a missing child or a missing loved one for a week, a month, a year, 20 years. I can't even imagine. 3 days just almost killed me, and my heart is broken for these people who go through it for years. It's just, and people who lose a loved one to murder as well. It's just, it's an awful, awful road.
Well, I know it's late for you. I'm going to let you get going here, and I want to thank you personally for sharing and having the courage to come out and talk about your story and share the insights and the fortitude that it took for you to also stand up and talk to the Boogeyman and try to get more understanding of what happened to your daughter from somebody who's been on that front line, who's been there, and working for justice and advocacy for victims. Your daughter's death was not in vain, and as much of a painful fee as that was, you've done so much to help others to hopefully avoid or at least get through it easier than you had to 18 years ago. So thank you very much for being a politician that lives up to their promises and steps up and seeks justice. That is amazing in today's day and age. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much. And I'm just a mom. Thank you.
You're a mom, but you're someone that goes beyond the damage that's been done, and you've reclaimed your life and your daughter's life by helping to save others. And that's remarkable. Wow. It needs to be commended. So thank you very much. And listeners, these are the kind of stories that I'm glad we're able to share with you so that you can hear from people that have been through this and what it's like to go through the looking glass and back, and so that you can see that the tragedies that befall our lives do not have to end our lives, do not have to be the end of what we do, but they can be the beginning of making a change. And you can collapse and allow yourself to fall in dust and despair, or you can do as our guest Rebecca Petty has done and step up and make sure that the changes take place and that no one has to deal with this again. And if we continue to rise up as one voice and we continue to work together, and no matter how powerless you feel, you just heard from a state representative, you can make a difference. You can alter it with something as little as an email, and getting 25 people that believe in what you believe in to send that same email. Well, not the same, but to send an email worded and talking about the same issues. We can start to see a wave take place. And if 25 is powerful, then let's give them 50. And if 50 is powerful, let's give them 100. It takes nothing out of your day. And there are many of you that sit there on the crapper flipping through your phone reading Facebook, and in that same amount of time you could have sent off an email that could change history and change the way our judicial system covers these crimes and takes care of the victims and makes sure that they're the story. So please don't feel weakened. Don't feel like you're at a loss. Don't feel like you have no voice. We need to reclaim our voices, and it's got to start with us. We'll be back with you next week. And I want you all to have a very safe and happy Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever religion, faith, belief system you have in. I hope you are surrounded in love and laughter. And let our guest's story be a very important part of wisdom to share unto you, that nothing we have is guaranteed. So make sure that you cherish the love and the friendship and the family that you have, because at any moment it can be gone. So make the best of that while you have it. We'll see you again next week right here on Beyond the Darkness True Crime Tuesday.
Well, there you go, folks. That was the program with Rebecca Petty, Arkansas State Representative, Letters from the Boogeyman, and I hope you enjoyed what you listened to there. Again, that's just a taste of what you get every Tuesday over at patreon.com/True Crime Tuesday. That's the other show that we do here at Beyond the Darkness, and you can get in on it every single Tuesday over at Patreon. It's real simple. Just go to darknessradio.com, click on the True Crime Tuesday banner. It takes you right over there, and for $5 a month, and you know you're going to blow through $5 real easy, but for $5 a month, you get a brand new show every Tuesday with a brand new true crime topic, and the Dumb Crime Stupid Criminals segment, which you know you're going to have some good laughs and some fun with, or the I Knew a Murderer segment, one or the other. Each show is an hour and a half to 2 hours in length, and it's the best in true crime radio. And it's brought to you every single week, plus you get access to the archives. It's well worth the $5 spent, folks, and it helps fund Beyond the Darkness as well. It's well worth the money, folks. Go over there right now. Take a look at the page. Take a look at what there is to offer, all the different topics, all the different shows. Patreon.com/True Crime Tuesday, or just go to darknessradio.com, click on the True Crime Tuesday banner, and subscribe right now. We'll look forward to seeing you over there at Patreon. and being a part of the True Crime Tuesday family. We might even have a couple of promotions coming up over in the True Crime Tuesday page, or some giveaways, and we'll let you know about that as well. That will happen for True Crime Tuesday subscribers. We'll have some little perks for you over there as well coming up. So be sure to become part of the family over there at True Crime Tuesday, and we'll look forward to seeing you over there. For Dave Schrader, I'm Tim Dennis. Join us again tomorrow here on Beyond the Darkness as we have more of the strange and supernatural for you on the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness.